Hey everyone, Kathy the Vegan Prepper here, and today I want to bring you a conversation about burdens and I don't know, how to maintain maybe some lightness as we're just going through the things that we're going through. Let's go ahead and get into it. Vegan Prepper. Vegan Prepper. First of all, I believe we are not beasts of burden. I think that God created us for paradise, which is why it's so difficult for us when we do face hardships, we do face difficulty. There's that underlying current that screams out of us that says it's not supposed to be like this. Why? Because we have eternity written in our hearts and we know what things are supposed to be like. If God has this way, things are perfect. Originally that was Eden, now it's heaven, right? I believe in God's sovereignty. I believe that he wins in the end, but ultimately humans are the ones who have sovereignty on the earth right now, the way things are, right? We are the ones who are meant to have dominion and authority on this earth. And so that's why it looks the way it is, because people can't even get the basics of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? If we all could just figure that out, the whole world would be different. We just follow one biblical principle, just that one. Love each other, love God, love each other. Don't even love God then. Just treat others the way you want to be treated and the whole world would fix itself. Like, it would just be kind of amazing. But yeah, I think that there's a lot to that. The stress that people feel, the burden that people feel, it's because there's something inside of us that knows that it's not supposed to be like this and it's supposed to be better. Saying all that though, I also believe we have been created in the image of God. We're divine, amazing beings. It's what separates us from the animals. I know that might be something that you might be surprised hearing a vegan say. I believe humans are not just another kind of animal. I do believe that with all of my heart. I believe that we are the ones meant to have dominion and authority on the earth. But I also definitely believe that there are some special instructions attached to that. Primarily, tend and keep it, as in preserve it. Keep it the way God made it. There's a lot to be said just in that one sentence that we could go into. I'm not going to go into right this second, but yeah, my views are complex, okay? You don't necessarily know who I am just because I happen to be vegan or just because I happen to be Christian. I have a lot going on in here. A lot that I've seen and a lot that forms my conclusions and the way that I think about the world. But yeah, we are created in his image. We are meant to be powerful. We're meant to have dominion. We're meant to have authority. That's why I believe when we face adversity, why humans feel so compelled to overcome that, right? To fight against it and win. Why? Because we want to look like our dad. We want to look like who we are made in the image of. We are creative. We're powerful. And we have that inside of us because of the way that God made us. And I truly believe that. So there's so many things, but we end up feeling super burdened though by things that are beyond our control. I think sometimes too is because we forget, what is in our control, what isn't in our control. We try to control the uncontrollable because we end up feeling insecure in the face of things that we can't fix, we can't do. I think a lot of people are feeling that right now. They're feeling the pressure, right? With the way the economy is going, inflation, you don't need to hear it from me. You're hearing it everywhere. Existential threats, really, like threats of doom, I think that the US hasn't faced in a really long time. We've got players on the world stage who are kind of making moves and making threats, and people are nervous about it. We've got a lot of personal things happening. For me personally, I actually recently was reading a news story that really brought up a lot of stuff in me, stuff that I thought that I had dealt with. It was just tragic, awful story. And I'm not going to get too into that part, but it just brought up a lot, like things I thought were done in me and healed, and somehow that came up as a result of the news story, not just the content of the story itself, but the helplessness that I felt in the face of knowing that stuff like this is going on in the world. This is the kind of stuff that I had been through as a little girl and not being able to do anything about it. And that sense of helplessness, the subject itself and the helplessness that I felt, I think completely together is, I think, what triggered the triggered those feelings, because that's exactly what it was as a little kid, is being in the suffering and being completely helpless to change it. Like I could not rescue myself. I could not save myself, right? So these are things, feelings of helplessness and feelings of overwhelm and things like that. And so you may not have had stuff like that in your own past or things that you have dealt with, but those feelings of being helpless to change anything. And what do we do with that? Well, I think a lot of it for me personally, and this is something that I feel like God was pointing out to me just in these last couple of days, it's recognizing what I am and what I am not responsible for. There is an indefinable, beautiful, spiritual thing that comes just straight from Him that has nothing whatsoever to do with me. Something that I'm not responsible for. I am not responsible ultimately for my safety and for my security, even for my very life, right? This body that you see here, this is a physical shell that holds a life that nobody on this earth has anything to do with. Nobody has anything to do with the spark that lives inside of me. Nobody had anything to do with the spark that lives inside of you. It is pure life. God planted a seed, and the body allows the seed to grow. But we have nothing to do with that life, that soul, that spirit that's on the inside of us. I hope that I'm expressing that very well. Or I hope I'm expressing it well enough. I think that there's a lot too. And so that was actually the picture that I feel like God gave me. I'm looking right now at my garden. That's what I keep looking at. It's these two okra plants. Now I got some seeds that were kind of old. And I planted a whole row of okra and only 2 came up. Who knows? Who knows why? Out of all of them, those are the only 2 that came up. But I'm looking at these absolutely gorgeous plants and I'm seeing, I had nothing whatsoever to do with that. Now, I have created garden beds. I water. I put soil out there. I try as best I can to create an environment for things to grow in. And I have worked at cultivating an environment, right? I've cultivated like a physical space kind of, right? Just like this body is a physical space for the spirit that lives inside of me. I've cultivated kind of a physical environment, but I have nothing whatsoever to do with that seed. I might have put it in the ground, but I didn't program it. I didn't put the DNA in it that tells it to be okra, that tells it to grow tall when it's super hot, to thrive when other plants die in the heat. The okra thrives because it was built that way. I didn't have anything to do whatsoever with that. There's a verse in the Bible that talks about a farmer planting seeds and he goes to sleep and the seeds grow, but he doesn't know how. And it's like I'm sleeping and that thing is growing because I have nothing to do with that. I can create the environment and it will grow, but ultimately I am not responsible for whether or not the okra grows, if that makes sense. I'm not responsible for those leaves or the vegetables that come off of that plant. That wasn't me. Even as much as I can create the environment, that plant was not me. So just as I am looking in my life though, with my preps and I put stuff together, and this is, I think, where I might separate a little bit and where my attitude towards all of this is different maybe from other preppers. But I do what I can, because what am I after? I desire safety and security for my family. I desire safety and security really for the whole world. Every person who prepares, I've said it before, is like a little pocket of peace in the world. We're kind of taken care of when stuff goes down. We're not participating in running off, buying off of shelves because we have plenty in our home already. We are not competing with people when resources are sparse. Because we're already set, like so many reasons that this is a really great thing, not just for us, but for everybody. If everybody would just work on something, even though you don't have to be at the scale, you could be just even a small way. It's creating a pocket of peace in the world, creating more security. We're creating the physical environment, right? That will ideally allow safety and security and peace to flourish in that environment. But ultimately, I am not in control of that. If bombs dropped in my city, somebody nukes Phoenix or something, I can't control that. I ultimately can't control my safety and my security in that environment or whatever. I have nothing whatsoever to do with that. I can prep everything and then, you know, get hit by a bus, or you know what I mean? Like, or you can do everything that you can in order to make something flourish. And still I can't control ultimately every aspect of my life. Like the word says too, that God has written for me, all of the days of my life are written in a book. And I don't take a fatalistic view of that. I think of it as like, he just already knows what's going to happen. So that's what's there. I can do everything I can to make the choices that prolong my life. But ultimately, the only one responsible for the life in me is God. And then even if this body goes, my life lives on. I don't die. I'm never going to die, honestly. Like, it's just not going to happen. I will move on from my body. You know, I got a really clear picture of that concept when my mother was passing away. She passed away in December of 2020. And so we were spending the last weeks of her life visiting as often as I could. Thankfully, she was able at that time to be in my uncle's home. And she wasn't just like dying alone in a facility somewhere. Praise God. I know that there are people who face that during that time, but she did not. She was dying of cancer. And then because I don't like to speak fear, I'm not trying to judge my mother, but I don't want to speak fear into people's lives, especially if you are currently battling cancer. I believe God heals. I've seen many miracles. However, she did not do anything really for it. She chose basically not to treat it and then just ended up dying. So basically, in the last few weeks of her life, as she was fading away, we were there every single day. But she was often asleep, not able to really interact with us. Sage would go into the room where she was, and even oftentimes when she was asleep, Sage would just sit there and hang out with her, basically. She was only like 2 years old, or close to 2 years old, but she'd just sort of hang out with her. I thought it was the sweetest thing. It was nothing that I ever told her to do. She was just the sweetest little thing. She'd walk into the room and she'd go and she'd kiss my mom's hand. And then she'd like leave. And then when my mom was awake, you know, she'd just sit in her lap and they would be together or whatever. And it was a really beautiful thing. But like, I can't tell you how many times I saw her do that. She'd run into the room while my mom was asleep and just like kiss her hand and spend time in there. Even when she was sleeping, and then maybe she'd go off and play or whatever, but there was always at least something. She'd go over, she'd touch her, she'd do something, you know. She just walked in because she perceived my mother's presence in that room. But the morning that she died, we went over and we arrived after my mother had already, you know, gone on to heaven. And my daughter, it was just kind of incredible to me. I watched. She just ran into the room. She stopped. She looked, and it was like I could see it. She just looked at my mom, like my mom's body on the bed, and then just ran right back out. Like, it was just this like, it had never been like that. The whole time that we had been visiting my mom, this was the first time I ever saw her do that. It was like she understood without anybody telling her, without anybody saying anything to her. That young, she walked into that room, she perceived my mother was no longer present in that room, and she just left. And it was like, I don't know, it was really, really impactful to me. That really impacted me. I'm never going to forget that as long as I live. Just kind of the way that she was like, oh, Mima's gone, bye. And she just left. Like, she's not here to kiss. She didn't go kiss her hand because she wasn't there to kiss. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, it's just really interesting to me. So ultimately, I feel like there's this like, if we can kind of divide it, and I don't know that I express it very well, but we can divide what is and what isn't my responsibility. I can do everything I can. I can prep, I can store my food, I can prepare things, again, to create that environment of security and peace. But ultimately, I'm not responsible for that. I'm not. And again, it might sound like it's not a very comforting thought, but to me, honestly, that comforts me. It absolves me of responsibility. That should something insane happen that's completely beyond my control, completely beyond my comprehension, completely out of my personal, you know, whatever rule over my life, that it's not my responsibility to take care of my family. Ultimately, it is God's responsibility. And that even if I leave this body, I'm still okay. You know, that was another moment that I felt when I had my miscarriage in 2016. I remember the grief that I felt, and I still feel. But another kind of amazing moment with God, I remember, I'm getting super personal here, but I feel like it's all kind of conveying like what is living in here to try to express how I receive comfort through these times. But I was crying and crying and crying because I don't believe for one second that God does anything like that. He doesn't make people sick. He doesn't like to teach them a lesson. What an abusive parent that would be. That's ridiculous. He doesn't do bad things to us. It's the devil who comes to steal and kill and destroy, and Jesus who came to give life and life more abundant. Let's get that really clear. God is only good. He does not do evil. But I don't believe that he took that child from me. But I remember being in the kitchen and praying, and I was just crying out to God, and I was saying, the devil took my baby. The devil took my baby. And it was just like in those moments where I can't, like, he took my baby. He stole my baby. He stole my baby. And I felt like God said to me, he doesn't have your baby. I have your baby. And like, how true is that, right? That maybe the thief comes to steal, but he can't keep anything that he stole. Nothing that he has, nothing that is stolen is something he gets to keep. He doesn't get trophies. He doesn't get any of that, right? God didn't steal that child from me, but the devil didn't get my baby. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like that's a really important distinction to make. I was kind of in that moment realizing that that baby is up in heaven waiting for me, and she will be there for me. And when I get there, it's going to be an entire eternity that I'm going to get to spend with that child. And it's going to be like, this life is a vapor, right? It's a blip. There is going to be virtually like like in my heart, it's going to be like I never lost her, right? Because there's also that verse in the Bible that says, and he will wipe away all tears from their eyes. And there will be no more mourning and no more death. That when we are in the presence of God, we are in heaven. There's no more mourning. There's no death. Everything is set right. Everything is made new, right? Behold, I make all things new, is what he says. I believe on a certain level, even I will be with the people in my past who have wronged me, and we will be able to be in a perfect relationship, even in heaven, beyond issues, beyond hurt, beyond pain. And so when I feel those burdens coming on me again, and I feel that sense of weight coming on me, and I'm realizing I'm taking on a burden I'm not supposed to take. I'm considering myself responsible for something I'm not responsible for. And I realize that's happening again. It's just about going back to Jesus, sitting at his feet and giving those burdens back over to him and trusting him no matter what happens. And again, he leads us in wisdom, and we can do everything that we can to create a physical environment where these good things can grow in our lives, right? Like you work hard in school, you get good grades, so that you can hopefully have success and good things in your life. But ultimately, there is a success, right? There is a blessing in life that comes that's beyond anything that we can do. It's those moments where you were like in the right place at the right time, where you met that person, and there was no reason that you should have met that person, except suddenly you felt like you needed to leave early for some reason, and then you ended up connecting with somebody who ends up, giving you a new job, or like crazy things happen. That right place, right time stuff happens because God leads us and positions us. And that's not something that you can do. There's grace that covers our lives and a blessing that covers our lives that is beyond our own self-efforts. Though doing what's good, acting in prudence and wisdom creates more opportunities like that. Because you're probably not going to get to buy a house, for instance, if you haven't made yourself responsible enough to own one, or you haven't gotten some money set aside for a down payment, or you haven't, you know what I mean? Like there's, it's like that balance of the grace and blessing of God, and then us doing what we can to facilitate that grace and those blessings being able to show up more in our lives. If we have good soil, the seed can land and it can grow, I guess is the point. And so how do you release stress? How do you release burdens? And I think, I don't know if I really even made it super clear, but I think it's about remembering what I am and am not responsible for. I can be responsible for stocking up the food, but God is the one who's still responsible for my safety. And then no matter what happens, he wins in the end. So it's kind of like, you just got to keep moving, and trusting and recognizing just who it is that, I don't know, that has the ultimate control, the ultimate victory. And that's what helps me, I think. But yeah, definitely when I start feeling the stress and I start feeling the burden, that's my signal to go right back. I got to abide, right? John chapter 15. Abide in me and I'll abide in you. For with me you can do all things. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And so anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on that. No matter what's going down, no matter what we face, you know, ultimately, he's the winner. So anyway, I guess that's it for me. I'm going to go spend time with my family. Clearly, my husband's home and my son is home, and I'm excited. We're going to enjoy ourselves. Very excited. Just God ultimately, he's so good, you know, and we're called in the word to bear one another's burdens, weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. And I kind of love that, because that was something even when I had my miscarriage, and it felt like everyone around me was having babies. I wasn't like, just because I was suffering, I didn't begrudge my friends their celebration of their children. And I think sometimes too, we can get caught up in this feeling that because somebody else is suffering, that means I should be suffering too. Like it might help them somehow. And surely when we are in the presence of somebody who has just lost someone or who is grieving, then it's appropriate in that moment when you're face to face with that person to be grieving with them, right? To love them and bear their burden. But apart, me being sad because I feel like obligated to be sad because somebody else is sad does nothing for them. Nothing whatsoever. Literally nothing, okay? So the best thing that I can do to create this better world is to experience the joy and blessing of life when I receive joy and blessings in my life, and just experience the crap out of that, right? Because bad will always come again. Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble, but be of good cheer, right? I've overcome the world. And that word cheer means like cheerful, like be happy. I've overcome the world, okay? And so if I can experience joy and I can experience blessing, and I'm not walking around like with this cloud over my head, like burden, like I feel like I'm doing something or somehow helping somebody because I've put on this heavy thing and it does nothing, all I do is spread more of that around me. Like my job is to throw that off and experience happiness. If somebody else is suffering, it's sad and I can pray for them, and if there is a physical way that I can help, then I will try to do that. But emotionally in my own life, I'm not going to be unhappy just because somebody else is unhappy and think that I'm doing them a favor. All right. So that was free. I don't know if I explained that very well either. But yeah, we're going to go enjoy ourselves and just have fun. So anyway, I don't know. I love you guys. I think, especially with the subject matter we cover with the prepping, and all the channels are blowing up right now and getting super dramatic and like, oh, doom and gloom and blah, 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 you know. And I'm feeling it, you know, but I don't want to burden anyone. And so that's kind of my hope, is to hopefully unburden you and just give you permission to be happy. Maybe that's ultimately the point of this video, is you know what? You have permission to be happy. No matter what's going on in the world, you can be happy, okay? Rejoice. Praise God for your blessings, and just be happy. All right. Okay. That's it. And as always, I hope the rest of your day is good. and your life stays wonderful. That's it.